Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yance. Today, my guest is Daniel Eilola. He is the artistic director of the Lake Worth Playhouse. This is part one. Enjoy. Okay, today I have a guest with me. I have Daniel Eilola. How are you doing, sir?
Excellent, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So, the first thing I was interested to, I came across in my research is that your first love was basketball.
Yes. Yes. I come from a family of, I'm the youngest of six, and I have
Mhm.
three older brothers. And I grew up playing basketball. I grew up actually right outside of Southwest Philadelphia.
Mm.
So it was a lot of kids my age. And back when I was young, in the summertime or after school, you just sort of went out of the house and you had to keep busy for,
Yeah.
for the next few hours until dinner, until it was time to do homework. So it was usually the easiest thing to do, to go down to the park and play some sort of sports. But I always sort of gravitated to basketball, and my
Mm.
family did as well. I have a brother that played college basketball. My father played on a state championship basketball team in Michigan. So it was always present in our life.
Wow.
Basketball. Yeah.
Now it's true that you're 6'7", correct?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm tall. I'm probably about 6'6" now. I think I'm shrinking a
Six
bit.
six.
About 6'6". Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you played a center,
Yes.
which of
Yeah.
course.
Yes.
Is height something in the family? Is that something that runs in the family?
Yes. I'm actually the tallest in my family, but I'm 6'6", 6'7". My brother and my father were both 6'5". I have two other brothers that were 6'3", 6'4", and I have
Wow.
two sisters as well, and they're about 5'8" to 5'10".
Wow. Damn.
Yeah.
Um, so coming from like a sports family, was the arts a big thing there, or were you just kind
No,
of?
not at all. Um, for me, it was my introduction to acting and theater and was through film. Being the youngest of six, I was the youngest by about 10 years. So it was, in essence, almost growing up an only child in a big family, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So to fill time, at late at night, I was always a night owl too. So I would always um, stay up late and pop the TV on at 1 in the morning when my parents were
I mean,
asleep. And I grew up on films, all sorts of films, classics, movies of the day. So I was always obsessed with acting and with film. And then I didn't realize until high school that theater was a form of that. That all film, a lot of film actors and directors and whatnot had come from the theater world. And I wasn't really exposed to theater until I was dating a girl who was in a production of Funny Girl in high school. So
ah,
I saw the live production of that, and it intrigued me early on that was possible. That was, because I always sort of had this image of what theater was in my head, and it didn't line up with what with the energy and the what I was struck by seeing a live production. So that's sort of when theater first was when I first noticed theater. But no, we weren't an artistic family in that sense, and it wasn't like we spent weekends going to see shows or anything like that. It was farther, couldn't be farther from that. Honestly,
yeah,
it was more of a blue collar sports.
yeah,
You sort of did what the Joneses did in the neighborhood, sort of thing, and the performing arts weren't a part of that equation.
yeah. So were they? So you kind of did you start going out for plays at the end of high school, or?
When I went into when I started college, I took an acting class as an elective,
Yeah.
like arts humanities elective. And I remember the first day of class, and I was always shy. I was never one to be the life of the party, or be one to be the first one to go public speaking or anything along those lines. But because of my interest in film and the availability of it as an elective, I figured, why not? Let's just check this out. And I remember my first day in an acting class in college, we did like these improv exercises. And I remember it just clicked. And I was doing things that that got a reaction out of the other students as the audience and from the professor. And to hear a laugh for the first time when you're involved in those activities, it really, it just kind of just gave me this feeling, the feeling that you still get today. I still get today of that adrenaline rush. So I parlayed that. The professor of the class actually knew of these one act original plays that were being produced by the college, and they suggested that I audition for them, and I got a part. So I very quickly went from taking my first class to being in a production in front of about 500 people each night, which was terrifying at first.
Yeah.
And without any real, strenuous training as of yet. I would get that later. But I always say the best training is to get up there and to be in something. Whether it's good, bad, mediocre, the more stage time that you can get and experience, you really can't go wrong, in my opinion. So, I went through the process of like a 6-week rehearsal and a couple weeks of performances. And I still remember my first time on the stage, because it was a monologue. It was 4 monologues. So I had one of the monologues. It was about 45 minutes long. And I remember starting the monologue, and about 3 lines in, I jumped to the end. And just because of nerves, I could not control.
Yeah.
I didn't have any techniques to deal with any of that stuff.
Yeah,
so
45-minute monologue. That's a huge thing to just put on a novice actor.
It's a huge undertaking. And they had an understudy for all of us, but my understudy had quit a few weeks beforehand. That didn't, so it was really all on me, and I did not realize the pressure of it until we got closer. And then all I could think about that first performance were the people that were there to see me. And I couldn't get that out of my head. And I remember going out on stage, and I still couldn't shake it. And remember jumping to the end, just messing up my lines. And I remember, there was about a 5-second delay there, which felt like, could have been 5 minutes, where I was able to adapt, remember where I was at, and tie it back into the beginning, and not begin again, but take it from there. And I was able to circle back at the end and correct what I had done there as well. But just that feeling of being able to adapt and to figure it out in real time in front of people was an amazing feeling too. And I carry that with me to this day, as far as, a lesson learned that day of just to keep going and to hang in there, and to there have been a million things that have happened over the years, but that was the first thing that really stood out to me. And then having success with that, then it led to going out and being cast in other productions, and just then getting some really good formal training from different areas. But again, continuing to try to get cast in any role and anything I could get cast in, just to be a part of a production. And I realized later in life too, when I came back to it, how much I learned and gleaned from other folks in my directing. When I really strictly became a director, how much I had learned from good, bad, or indifferent again. What I wouldn't do, what I would do, who I wanted to emulate as far as how they interacted with a cast, or how they did their preparation. So I always sort of kept my eyes and ears open, and just try to get involved in whatever I could early on, just to be a part of things and to learn.
So like, what style did you come to study in? I'm just curious.
Well, I I fell in love. Well, I went through this Stanislavski training, but I fell in love specifically with Lee Strasberg. And one of my favorite books by him, I'm going to get it wrong now, is A Dream of Passion. Was one that I would read over and over again and gleaned a lot from and learned a lot from. So I was, and I was into the whole actor studio thing, and before they even came out with that show with James Lipton. I just a lot of my reading, a lot of the people that I would interact with in the theater world were of that mindset. So that's where my training, a lot of my study was initially. And over the years it is of course expanded and whatnot, but that's still my base.
See, I went to the neighborhood Playhouse for Meisner, and I also went to
Wow.
Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute. So I have like the opposite of the two coins, because
Yeah.
neighborhood Playhouse gives you like 2 years, and if you don't get in to the second year, I was just kind of like, all right, well, screw you. I'm gonna go to Strasberg and do their technique. So I like have like both. So I'm familiar with both, but that's so cool that you
Cool.
that you're familiar with that.
Yes.
Did one of your professors at Townsend University push you towards that?
No, I
Or
found it on my own. I just, I usually when I'm, there's not many more examples other than the theater, but it's always been something for me where I've just always thirsted for more knowledge or, and I had, going back to the way I'd grown up and the films that I'd seen and the actors that populated those films in that time period, the more research I did on them, I found out where they trained and, what was important to them.
Because you mentioned in a previous interview, Wait Until Dark, and that's with Alan Arkin. And
Yes.
I think he went to one of those schools.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I directed Wait Until Dark, about 5 years now. And that was something I was able to bring to the main stage here at the Playhouse and frighten some people, which, it's dark. I mean, it's...
They what is it? I think they sold that movie in the trailers saying that we're going to darken the theater to the amount that is absolute possible to darken a theater. Now I don't think you could do that. Like, I guess they're saying like they would darken the exit signs, which would be a big no-no today.
What was difficult about it with that particular production is everything had to be dark, but you had to light what was going on the stage with the refrigerator light. So, of course we couldn't go completely dark, but that was the biggest challenge of that. Was that sequence, because not only is the lighting particularly challenging there, but also the scene itself is very physical. It's an attempted murder at that point with the villain, Harry Rote, I believe his name is. It's been a few years, who's attacking our lead actress in that, and that was difficult in its own right. But then also with the lighting and whatnot. But that was a production I was really proud of. That accomplished, what I wanted to accomplish with the audience that typically comes out and sees a show in our main stage theater. They're used to bright and happy, and even with even with Agatha Christie, it's implied violence that happens off stage and whatnot. But this was really in your face, a terrifying 15-minute stretch that we got to put together, and I got to see how it would affect this audience each night.
How did it work? Did you?
It was tremendous.
Did they get it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I would watch people jump. I would sit in the back every night and watch them jump at certain times where I wanted them to jump. And it was just a great production.
That's great. Yeah, I was listening to when you did Flashdance, you did an interview and you talked about that you were going to be doing Wait Until Dark. So I was like, I wanted to mention that. You mentioned actors that you looked up to. Who were those actors? I'm just curious.
Well, it was the obvious ones of it was Al Pacino when I was a kid, because The Godfather, Robert De Niro, Robert Duvall. Who else from that time period? Jack Nicholson, of course. I mean, I know there's some more obscure ones that I'm glossing over. But yeah, I would say basically those folks. And yeah, I would say back in that time period when most of the films that I was seeing, Bill Murray I always enjoyed as well.
Yeah, he's a very underrated,
Very underrated.
just straight actor. If you look at
Yes.
some of his older work, he
Yes.
I mean, he took off from acting to study philosophy, which he makes a joke of that in Groundhog Day, when
Yeah.
that's exactly what he did.
Yeah. I remember the first thing that I saw him in that wasn't some sort of Saturday Night Live or Caddyshack type film was Where the Buffalo Roam, where he played Hunter Thompson.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're the most obvious ones that come to my head. I'm sure, if I could write them down with you and thought about it for 10 minutes, there would be a lot more. But they're the folks that, that led me to Strasbourg, that led me to researching that and sort of applying that as well. But then when I went to school, some of the professors in Towson would teach different elements of that I could connect onto, but also, would teach a lot of other things that I'd never been exposed to as well. So,
So did you learn, because you were in Baltimore when you went to
Yeah.
school? Did you stay in Baltimore, or did you go back up to Philadelphia to study?
I stayed in Baltimore for a little bit, probably for about a year, and then I went back to Philadelphia, and I studied with a guy named George DeCenzo. He's probably the best acting teacher I've ever worked with. His claim to fame was he was in the television movie Helter Skelter. He played the DA, but he was also, he would always pop up in things. He was in Back to the Future. He played the father who hit Marty with the car. So yeah, I would study with him a few days a week, and it was high level classes. That's for me. It's always an indicator of a theater region too. Is if you have places where professionals can go and really continue to study, and because there's not, how many opportunities do you really have to be on stage consistently? You know what I mean? So it was a great opportunity to do that.
That's cool, and that was in Philadelphia. That's great. You didn't have to go to New York. It was like,
No,
now it's becoming more obscure to get those kind of teachers. They're all either in New York or they're LA. I mean, now we have Zoom, so you can somewhat get them, but it's not the same as me being.
Not the same as being in the room,
And
the thing was that he taught classes in New York as well. So New York and Philly are only an hour and a half apart. So it's not that difficult, so he would teach a few times a week in New York and a few times a week in Philly. And also I could go up I could be based in Philly and also audition in New York and audition in Philly. But yeah, that was something that I wish I had now, actually, was that type of class that was around where you could really go in and be pushed and challenged. And, it wasn't just a basic acting class,
Yeah, see, that's the thing. A lot of those older ones, there was the scene study aspect, but they also pushed you into other directions as well. And now it's really just the scene study where you come in and you're watching somebody and it's over. And it's like, but in order for it to really take effect, it has to be almost 24/7. You got to be surrounded by it. It can't just be, that's what I liked about Strasbourg, and especially Neighborhood Playhouse. They wouldn't let you do anything. You couldn't do any short films. You had to basically, you were there 9 to 5 every day, and you were just absorbed in it. So now you leave acting and you go into, you become a claims adjuster, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I did a few different things. It was, I was at a time in my life where I was in a relationship, and I actually met my first wife in a production of Barefoot in the Park. I played Paul and she played Corey. So yeah,
Good for it.
it was something where I felt like I had to be more responsible and start a family and do all these things.
Yeah.
And so I did a few different things. I did some, I worked for a real estate appraiser for a bit of time. I worked for State Farm Insurance. That was the last non-theater job I've had. It was about 12 years ago now. But yeah, I was never happy. It was just something to make money and to work in an industry, you know, where I could make a lot of money, possibly down the
Mhm.
line. And it just never made me happy. It was never fulfilling, and there was always something missing for
Mhm.
me. And it was just a hole in my life that you know I didn't
Mhm.
realize until I started to do it
Yeah.
again. How much it meant to me.
The reason I bring it up is
Yeah.
because now you're the artistic director at Lake Worth Playhouse, which I should have
Yes.
mentioned at the very beginning, which
Yeah.
I'll have a aside for that.
Yeah.
Um, with do you, did that prepare you for that job?
Oh, definitely. That's the positive experience of all that is it taught me how to be a professional. It taught
Mhm.
me, it taught me how to be organized, how to plan, how to lead, as well as sports. Is going way back to when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just how to conduct yourself in the corporate world would allow me to do the same in theater administration world, where I have
Yeah.
to deal with subscribers or deal with leaders of other theaters or leaders of other nonprofit organizations or anything along those lines. It did prepare me for that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's why I brought it up, is I was like, I bet that, I mean, you might not have enjoyed it at the time, but as you
no,
said, it prepared you for
sure.
what you're going to be able to do, the office side of being an
The office
artistic
side,
director.
the
Yeah.
administration aspect of it, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely helped with that. Yeah.
So that's great. That's great.
Hmm.
So you've explained this before, but I'm going to let you say it again. Tell me how you got involved with the Lake Worth Playhouse.
I was working for State Farm Insurance, and it was during a period of time where they started to get competition from Geico and all the silly commercials that the insurance companies do. Um, State Farm used to be like straight down the line, Mr. Steady Eddie, and
Yeah.
frankly, they started to lose out to the competition somewhat. Um, so they started to shift the company a bit, and basically they closed down one of the main offices that I worked in Pennsylvania, and I had a choice whether um, I wanted to be relocated or just sort of cash out
Mhm.
and start somewhere new. So I cashed out, and at the time, I didn't really have any deep connections in the Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania. Family sort of moved around the country. My parents had both passed, so I had an opportunity to come down to Lake Worth, Florida, well, the West Palm Beach area in Florida. So I did, and got a little place. And I was killing time one day. I was supposed to meet a friend, so I came to downtown Lake Worth and walked down the main strip, Lake Avenue here, and I saw this old historic theater, and they were showing Little Shop of Horrors at the time. So I stopped in, talked to them at the box office. I bought a ticket, saw the show. It was tremendous. I stopped at the box office afterwards, asked them some more, and they had auditions coming up for an Agatha Christie play called The Unexpected Guest. Believe it was strange.
Mm.
So I went and got a script, ordered a script of The Unexpected Guest, read it about 5 times. I started to pick out in my mind what sides would I pick if I was putting the show together, and I sort of got really familiar with those. Went into the auditions, and I got the lead role in The
Mm.
Unexpected Guest. And while I was here, the artistic director of the time, remember, she gave me a hug, and it was my birthday. On one of the auditions nights, she found out about it and sang "Happy Birthday" to me with a few other people, and I felt so welcome and so special.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word, just something about this organization just made me feel like I had a home in a new area. So I came in, I did that play, I acted in that play. It had been, I don't know how many years since I had been on stage acting. So there was some growing pains getting back into it, but it was a great production at the end of the day. And they brought me in, they wanted me around for other things here. And so the artistic director had this black box theater that was sitting dormant. They were showing independent films, but they wanted to do some live entertainment. And she talked to me about a series in here about doing some small plays and some intimate stuff in this space. So they gave me that to start to keep me around. I also volunteered and worked backstage on a variety of different shows just to be around it again, because being away from it and having the opportunity to be around it again. And I realized that one of the things I realized is when I was strictly an actor years ago, I was always in my head about me. What do I need to do? What do I need from this? Me, 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 me. And then when I started to go on the other side of things, and I realized that, you're just a part of a whole, especially when I started to direct. And sometimes I'll need you to the music terms. Sometimes I need you to be my lead guitar player. Sometimes you just got to play bass. Sometimes you got to, lay me down something. So when I started to work, on some stuff backstage and in the lighting booth, I would just do whatever I could to be around it again. And I realized that I could get the same sort of adrenaline rush and the same sort of satisfaction just being any part of a production. So I worked a lot on things for them. They gave me the black box series, what I turned into the black box series here. So for about 5 years, I did some fundraising for them. They hired me on part-time at first, then full-time. So I did that's also working in the corporate world prepared me for learning how to write grants and how to manage things like that, manage grants and to do that sort of thing. So I got into the grant writing and fundraising portion of things for a bit, and was able to do that for the organization, but also develop the Black Box series, which we have been doing for almost 10 years now. And each season we do 3 to 4. Edward Albee, I've done Annie Baker, I've done a whole variety of different playwrights. We just did True West by Sam Shepard. I'll do newer relevant stuff, and I'll do some classic stuff as well. So yeah, I got to come in here and I got to really just program what I wanted to do and what I wanted to showcase and what I was interested in. And I got to work with some like-minded people, the people that came out and auditioned for things or stage managed. I have the stage manager that's been with me for 10 years over here. So yeah, it was just sort of getting some like-minded people and working on stuff together. And those people have changed over the years. They cycle in and out, but it's still the same spirit that I try to keep here. And yeah, it's been quite a ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was your major in? I'm curious.
Theater.
Theater.
Yeah.
And was your minor
Acting
in business?
No, strictly theater. And my focus was acting. My concentration was acting. And when I first started to direct, I would always come at it. And I find that as an artistic director, when I hire directors here, I'll direct. I'll direct maybe 2 to 3 productions a year, and the rest I contract in. I'll interview people and bring them in. And I find that, whatever somebody's specialty is, like I have a great director who is an equity stage manager, so her whole approach is, she's going to figure out the transitions and, that side of things first as she goes into rehearsals. Or I have somebody that does musicals who's a tremendous singer. So that's always the focus first, and everything else will fall in line afterwards. And for me, it's always been the acting and getting something up on his feet and doing some table work, but also talking through things. That's my favorite thing to do. And then staging things, painting pictures and whatnot. So yeah, it's been quite a ride with that. But then at a certain point, in about 5 years here, doing the Black Box series, our artistic director at the time retired and moved to Georgia. So they weren't quite sure if I could make the transition, I guess, to big frilly musicals. So I
Yeah.
was interim artistic director for a season, and I was able to transfer what I learned in the smaller space to the larger space, trying to set that same tone of, I don't know, I like to get talented people, but also good people to work with, people that I want to spend 6 to 8 weeks around,
Yeah.
that other folks want to spend 6 to 8 weeks around. So I and try to make it a supportive, creative atmosphere. And I think that I was able to take that feeling, put it on the main stage as well with the musical productions, and sort of elevate that a bit. And so now my focus is sort of both spaces, plus whatever else we're trying to develop. So it's gotten a lot busier, 3 times as busy as it used to be, just because we just keep churning out more and more programming.
How did you guys deal with COVID?
COVID was terrible, but we're in Florida, so that means that DeSantis opened everything up, and it was a real dilemma for us. But if we stayed dark, we would have gone out of business. We wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So what we did was, once we got the county and state go ahead to open this kind of facility, there was always, there was restrictions placed on it. We could only fill half of the theater, and we had to do space. We had to space people out and whatnot. And it was, of course, masks and whatnot. So that's what we did.
That's great.
What we ended up doing actually is I had a whole season of shows that were really large shows on our main stage. I had the producers. I had what else did I have? Annie. Just all these really big shows with really big casts. So what we did was
shows.
Yeah. But what we had to do was we couldn't have all of these casts, these shows with huge casts and expect to have everybody be safe and then make it to the finish line. So what we did was just ripped up the whole season. We went back and I just selected shows that were 2 people in a show, 4 people in a show. But we did our best work during COVID. Yeah. Because I got to do musicals that I want to say mattered. It wasn't, not that Guys and Dolls doesn't matter or that Beehive doesn't matter.
They're favorites. They're favorites.
Guys and Dolls. I'll tell you, we just did Beehive, the 1960s musical, and I've never seen an audience so goddamn happy to leave as they were leaving the theater because of how much they love the music and excited they were for it and whatnot. So there is, I'm a dark, twisted person.
I get that. I like that.
You know what I mean? But that's one of the things too about becoming the artistic director here. I appreciate that now. I appreciate the good feeling in a building because people are just goddamn happy to hear a good song, But what we had to do is rip all that up. And I came back with Next to Normal, which is 5 people. I did Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Oh, that's a great
which is 2 people. And then we had a band. I did Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, which is 2 people. And I did Always Patsy Cline, which is 2 people. But because nobody else in the area was doing anything really, there was only a few other people, I was getting, some really, not that I don't get top-notch talent, but I was getting even more top-notch talent when people would see that this is available and, hey, I'm okay. We were very careful about protecting our performers as well. We had masked and visored rehearsals up to a certain point. And then when the stuff came out, the testing and the vaccines, we were always about that. So, the folks that came in here to work on things trusted they were going to be okay, trusted us. And, we did like I said, we did some of our best work because we had great material that wasn't necessarily smiling, waving, and, overly happy.
Is that how you came to Heather's?
Yeah, well, the programming a season is difficult because you have to look at it, especially in a place like this, like a transient state or a place where people come for a part of the year. You sort of have to lay out a season in a certain way. And in the summertime, what we try to do is do something that will bring the folks in from the bars down the street, or maybe the non maybe the person that's not so much of a theater fan, but would go see a live show
and knows the movie.
Yeah, that knows the movie. And also we have a glut of performers that go to all these performing art, like younger performers that go to all the performing arts schools in the country. And we try to get some of them involved each season in the summertime. For instance, when I didn't realize that Heather, I mean, I love the film Heathers. I didn't, and I love the soundtrack, just researching it and getting into it. I love the book. And I thought, this is good. I mean, this is a good little summer show to roll out there. What I didn't realize was it's such a popular show among performers from 18 to 24 that I had a record turnout for auditions. And I ended up casting, it's the first time I've ever done this. I ended up casting three of the leads from a video audition. They were students at NYU, and they were based, you know, one kid lived in Boynton Beach, one other kid lived in West Palm Beach down here. And it was just tremendous production. But yeah, Heather sort of piggybacked onto the dark musicals that we had been presenting.
Well, it's not really that. It's not as dark as the film. That was my problem with the musical. I remember seeing it in New York, and I was like, "Oh, that's not how it happened."
No. But dark
he doesn't
enough
get redemption.
Right, exactly. But dark enough that we had to put, like, for instance, we had to put warnings in the playbill and whatnot.
Yeah, it's still a dark play. It's still dealing with, you know, murder and things like that. It's just, it ends happy.
Yes, it does end happy. They actually come on the stage for the final song. Yeah, that would bother me every night too. There's JD, you know, up in the balcony, singing with Heather Chandler, you know, and everything's okay, you know. Yeah.
Whereas in the other one, it's just Christian Slater blowing himself up.
Right.
It's like lighting a cigarette.
Lighting a cigarette, right? Yeah. So I mean, it and actually, you know, it kind of carried over as well, because I think that you know, some of the board and the executive director here as well got to see, you know, the work that we could do if we veered off a bit into some, you know, maybe some more sensitive material. Or stuff that's not necessarily old traditional musicals. And we actually opened this season up with, after Heathers, I followed it up with Fun Home, which was a tremendous production here. We had a really, really fantastic cast and director. But of course, it doesn't draw the attendance like Guys and Dolls. No, it doesn't.
Funhouse,
you know, because Fun Home, you know, it was an average average to below average audience as far as turnout. But we tried something out there like Beehive, and you know, I have 250 to 300. I almost have a full house every night. But it's also about, you know, defining who you are too. You know, change sometimes takes some time, and putting some material out there each season, you know, is kind of the way to do it. You know, it's sort of introducing your audience to different things. And it's not like that's a show like Fun Home or Next to Normal or anything like that is so outrageous that, you know, somebody that goes to see Mamma Mia won't watch it and enjoy what it is and maybe get something from it. They just need to be maybe pushed, or, you know, trust what we do here, trust that we do good shows and that this is going to be good, and trust us, come check this out.
And that's a good thing that you're doing. You're kind of like putting them in, putting these hidden gems in there, and be like, well, here's something that you might not really think is great, but watch how we do it. You know,
watch how we do it.
Expand. Yeah.
And here is the shiny object for Christmas time, when everybody's in town and, you know, all of the snowbirds are in the area. That's when we'll sort of go with tried and true programming to, you know, really to satisfy that audience.
Yeah. The people that come in from New York to, you know, get away from the cold.
And also, like, even the play about the baby with Edward Albee, we'll get that New York crowd that are down for the season that want to come see something that they would see, off Broadway or, in Greenwich Village or something like that. So we will also program something that's more identifiable to the intellectual that's coming down for the winter as well. So we try to cover all those bases. Yeah, we try to cover all those bases. And like there's certain times of the year when we can try things out. And October we tried out Fun Home. In July we tried out Heather's.
Halloween.
It's the time to do it.
It's Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did Reasons to Be Pretty, and you talked about how that was kind of tricky show. Talk a little bit about, I know this is a long time ago, but I'm curious. Talk about like what was the hardest thing about doing that show? Like just when did you do it exactly?
I did it, about everything. I always say 5 years ago. With everything, it's 5 years ago.
2 weeks.
I would say about 7 years ago, I did Reasons to Be Pretty, and I always liked the writing. But when you get into it, it's misogynistic in a sense.
Yeah, it is.
And it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be on some level. But I guess being raised, I came from a large family. I was raised by women primarily, even though I had brothers and a father. They were always off doing things or working and whatnot. So I was raised by my sister and my mom, my sisters and my mom primarily. So I've always sort of had that perspective, I guess, in my head. And when I was doing Reasons to Be Pretty specifically, I worked to make the female characters stronger than they were written in the script itself. Not that was like a conscious choice at the time. It wasn't like I came in and I went, fuck the playwright, and I'm coming in and I'm doing what I want to do. It was just sort of the way I work, and getting in the room with the people and working on it is how it turned out. Just because naturally discussing these characters and getting into the scene work, that's where it led us. So it turned out that I had people say that, their opinion of it had changed because, they initially had read it and gone thinking it was this, and it really turned out to be something different. But that was one of my favorite things to work on in this space. I was able to, and that was a situation too, where I was able to help actors make discoveries. I remember it's just sometimes you go round and round with this theoretical stuff and you get in your head, as a director and actors trying to explain something out. But that was as simple as giving one actor a piece of chewing gum during one rehearsal. And they started to chew the chewing gum in this one scene, and it made like a chain reaction and broke this slump they were in, that they just could not figure out the rhythm of the character. And it was the character, I forget the name of the character, but the security guard, the female who's the security guard in the show. Her husband got her a job in the factory. But I remember that was a moment to see an actor grab onto something like that and then make it their own and then take it to a whole nother level. That's what I enjoy. Like, I really enjoy, that's the payoff to this stuff is to see somebody get it, lean into it, and then take it to levels that that they didn't think they could, or that that you didn't think they could, but just to see somebody succeed and thrive. And
what you saw in them and they didn't realize was in them, you helped bring that out.
Yes,
I get that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I want to thank my guest, Daniel Eilola, for his time. I hope you enjoyed the interview. That was the end of part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. As always, you can find me at Justin Yachts. If you liked this podcast, please, give it a nice review. And if you would like to see more, consider subscribing. And I will see you next time on the DMF.